Okay, time for Moving the Sticks here with 710's Jake and Stacy. Every day from 10 to 2 you can hear them, but now we're going to talk about all this Seahawks stuff I mentioned in the first segment, right? And you've been hearing all week long. Now we know it's the defense, right? I don't know.
Unfortunately.
I think the numbers don't lie, right? We debated it last week. Was it the offense? Was it the defense? And it's still a mix of the two. Yeah. But the corners are having trouble covering. They're having trouble covering screens. There's a lot of dysfunction. There's frustration. At least we saw this all last week. They still can't stop the run. I showed some of the numbers earlier in the show. They're just dismal, and we feel like we're back in 2020, at least the first 6 weeks. So what do we do here? How are we fixing it? What are we doing? I mean,
some of the bigger issues they have, I'm going to be really honest, and you're not going to like it, you can't fix them in a week. Some of the biggest issues they have, like you cannot have a showing like they had against Minnesota and then snap your fingers and everything's fine the next week. And some of them are rooted in other issues that extend before this year. So the best fix, the easiest fix that can help you quite a bit, getting turnovers. I mean, it's all about the ball. That's Pete Carroll's, what his program's about. And we talked about 2020 and how poor they were to start the season. They had 10 turnovers through the first 5 weeks, and they got them in ideal moments. I mean, go back to Dallas. That was an example. Minnesota, the Seahawks were down by 2 touchdowns and back-to-back turnovers on Minnesota possessions changed the entire game around. So they just need to tap into that, and they can mask some of those issues.
No interceptions thus far.
No.
So,
no interceptions. Yeah. And a big reason why you've not been able to get those timely turnovers is because you see guys that are consistently not in the right place. Yeah. And that has been the biggest issue that we have seen thus far, highlighted by this last week against the Minnesota Vikings. And you hear Trey Flowers post-game saying, hey, I've got questions myself about what I'm supposed to do on defense and where the responsibilities are.
I've never seen guys so wide open throughout a game.
Yeah.
Like, one series or two, it's fine. But I every time I glanced up at the screen, there was a guy wide open. Yeah. And then I've seen on the internet things where each level of the defense had a guy wide open. So Kirk Cousins, take your pick.
Yes.
How do you? She said it. You can't fix it in a week.
You can't fix it in a week. But what you can do is what I know that what these guys are doing is your leadership group, Bobby Wagner, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, specifically starting there. They have to have these individual meetings, player meetings, individual meetings, pulling guys aside and saying, hey, we have to not only be better, what do we need to do in the moment of the heat of the moment to communicate so that we know how to play off of each other? Because right now, they don't know. They don't know whether Bobby Wagner is going to jump around underneath. They don't know, specifically the corners, if they're going to have help inside. So there's a lot of disconnect that's going on right now with this defense that has to get figured out very quickly. And then also the inability or lack of wanting to play man-to-man coverage to mix up their cover 3 zone scheme that Pete Carroll loves is noticeable.
It's predictable now,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So do you get Sidney Jones in the game here? Do you make a trade to get somebody else? I mean, is it a personnel thing now?
You know what? I will say the Seahawks have been great with midseason trades.
Sure.
Dwayne Brown,
Dunlap.
Marshawn Lynch, Dunlap, all midseason trades. Almost all of their midseason trades have worked out, particularly recently. I wouldn't rule it out. If they do not improve, I could see Schneider and Carroll saying we have to get something done. I think for right now, I personally am expecting at some point to see Sidney Jones, whether or not it's this weekend. I think Pete Carroll has made it clear he is very open to making a change there.
Right.
It's time.
And it is time, right? Okay, so now pass rush. We talked about it a couple weeks in a row. That fixes a lot of things. Where's Carlos Dunlap? Why is Jamal Adams playing way back 20 yards off the ball? I mean, that's what we want to see. We want to see a little pass rush here.
Well, you focus so much on the secondary, but it is something that works on both sides. You have to be able to have the pass rush to be able to affect the quarterback, and you have to be able to have the back end to take care of business long enough to allow your pass rush to be effective as well. So it works both ways. But you're right. The pass rush, it was non-existent. Honestly, that was the easiest game, I promise you, easiest game that Kirk Cousins has ever played in his football career, high school included. And so that has to change. You have to look at Jimmy Garoppolo, a quarterback who is easily affected by pressure. You have to be able to get to him. You have to be able to rattle him. And they did that last year. If you go back and look at the game of the first game that they played against San Francisco last year, they affected Jimmy Garoppolo. Bobby Wagner had 2 sacks. They got consistent pressure on him throughout the entire game. That, to me, is going to be the key because guess what? The 49ers are struggling in the ground game. A lot is on Jimmy Garoppolo's shoulders. He is the guy that they're leaning on right now to win football games for them.
Okay, so Jake was reading my notes because that's the next question, right? No, let's break down San Francisco. You got to get after Jimmy G. Like, make him make mistakes. He will make mistakes. He has shown he will.
He will. I mean, I was talking about turnovers. I don't know if I should say surprisingly, but he has 1 interception this season. But San Francisco as a team, I think, has a negative turnover differential. And so it is possible. It's a good game to get going. I think that these 2 teams are well matched to face each other right now. Seattle is, I think, a lot better than their stats would indicate. They certainly have the talent. They haven't been executing. San Francisco, if you look kind of down the board, right, total offense, total defense, rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, it's kind of middle of the road. That's not an insult. It's just they're a team that's beatable for you.
Sure, certainly. On the offensive side, how can Russ help out? Obviously, they can stay on the field a little longer, especially in the third quarter. But that's really what it is. It comes down to third downs. Again, like we talked about next week, how do they attack this Niners defense?
Yeah, this one was a hard one when it comes to this last week because they barely got the ball in the second half. Right. So you have 1 possession in the third quarter. You don't get your second possession until the beginning of the fourth quarter, just a little bit after that. That's not winning football. That's not complimentary football. So it's hard to look at the offense and say, you have to play better. You're the reason why they lost. But they do need to play better. They haven't scored in the second half. They scored 1 point or 1 touchdown in the second half thus far this season. That has to change. So really, this is a great opportunity for your offense, I believe, against a defense in the San Francisco 49ers that is not the same group that we witnessed last year, that you saw in 2019.
Right.
This is a susceptible group that is giving up big plays right now. They're in the middle of the road, the middle of the pack. And so I expect this offense to really carry this team this week. They're going to have to in order for the Seahawks to win.
Yeah, look what Green Bay did against them. And then, you know, they came back and won. The Niners probably should have won that game. But, you know, Aaron Rodgers did his thing. So Russell can do his thing. It just needs to be all put together. All right, good thoughts from these guys as we're not hitting the panic button yet, right? We're not yet.
I'm hitting the panic button, and this is why.
Now already?
Yes.
Oh,
here's why.
Okay.
With the schedule being what it is, normally I would say no way. It's way too early in the season to do that. But if you lose versus the San Francisco 49ers, think about this. The 4 days from then, you have the Rams coming into your building Thursday night. You haven't even played the Cardinals yet in your own division. You play the Steelers. You play the Saints. I mean, it becomes very hairy very quickly for you if you're sitting at 1-4. So this is a must-win game, in my opinion.
Okay, so he pushed the panic button.
Well, he pushed it for both of us. Now we're all panicking now, Jake. Thanks.